Hello, everyone. Welcome back to General Catalyst in New York. I'm Spencer. Really excited to have our most recent guest here. So Brent Tworetzky is at the Exo Group, which is a really interesting company here in New York. I'll let him describe it in sort of the family, wedding, baby space. He is a career product leader, has had a number of really interesting roles through education and other internet properties. Recently moved to New York, I guess maybe not that recently at this point.
Now it's a year and a half.
And it's been really fun getting to know him. And one of the things I've always respected about Brent is he brings a lot of focus to sort of the concept of product management, the discipline of product management, and takes it really seriously. And so, when we think in our portfolio about folks we like, our product leaders to spend time with, it's been really great introducing Brent around to share some of his strong views and some of his background and experiences. So welcome to General Catalyst in New York. It's great to have you here. And you're not American.
Do I need to leave the room?
No. I always think it's funny, like how people got here, and it's easy when people haven't heard you really speak yet, but it's easy to miss in your accent that you're not American. So just maybe to start, how'd you get here and where are you from?
Guilty. I'm originally from Cape Town, South Africa. I grew up there. I finished high school here in the States and went to varsity here in the States.
So what brought you here? Was it sport?
No. America is a very interesting and high opportunity place for life and careers.
Did you have family here or no?
I did. Growing up in Cape Town was a really interesting place, going through a lot of social change, a lot of economic change, a very high beta of what was actually going to happen there, whereas I actually had family in America. The universities are really great in America. So it was an awesome opportunity. It's normally quite hard to go to the States to go to college in the States if you haven't grown up here. It's either very expensive or hard to get in. I was lucky to be an American citizen.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, did you start in product right out of school? How did you get sort of enchanted with the discipline?
Gosh, well, yes, product management is. I love the discipline. It's I started my career before product management was a thing. Product management only started becoming a thing in the early to mid 2000s. Kind of when eBay started making it a thing, and Marty Kagan gets a lot of credit and has been a great advocate for the movement of product management that eBay kicked off. It was started getting in the water and becoming more of a thing in the mid 2000s, codified in the Bay Area a lot in the late 2000s, and has really become a thing spread out beyond there in the early 2010s in a broader scale. When I was in school, I was an application-minded engineer. At the time, there was no such thing as Amazon Web Services or Google App Engine. You basically drop your own servers. The systems didn't really allow for being the hero engineer that you could be today. So as an engineer, I felt slow, that I was a part of a machine, and at the time I couldn't move as quickly and as entrepreneurially as I wanted to, and I felt a little bit disconnected from the business because there's a lot of stuff that you would need to build on the back end to make a full service. So I jumped my way, said, how do I combine engineering with business and user applications? Mumbled my way a little bit. I was a venture capitalist for a couple of years. I'm sorry.
Misadventure.
A great experience, humbling to serve entrepreneurs. But I wanted to be a player as opposed to a coach. And found my way back to combining business, user research, and engineering into what became the discipline of product management.
And that started at Chegg?
For me, that actually started at Mint.
That's right.
Mint is a personal finance company that did some really nice work. It started in the mid to late 2000s. It grew quickly, got a lot of acclaim as being an interesting and exciting product company, and then was acquired by Intuit very early. So it's been with Intuit for quite a while now.
Still kicking around my inbox. I'm still getting emails from it.
But I was lucky because the person I worked for, the head of product at Mint, a guy named Aaron Forth, was a guy at eBay in that original cohort of product leaders.
Got it.
So I sort of absorbed,
got indoctrinated,
the eBay DNA. And the eBay product DNA back then was very much about users, both being user-centered, but also being very business-centered and being rigorous about what to work on. Remember this notion of product councils and bringing a case for why we should work on a product. What's both the user metrics and the business metrics? There's a rigorous way of thinking. So teams don't just work on what they decide feels good or what the most senior person says.
Right.
It gave rigor and accountability to what you worked on.
And so have you carried that philosophy through your experiences at Chegg, Udacity, and now at EXO, or have you kind of created your own kind of doctrine, user research, user science doctrine, as you've written about, or is that kind of much more of what you had learned early on?
I'm lucky. I've actually inherited 3 strains of product DNA. There are companies that have been very influential in the fields of product management, different types of thinking. So, for example, Zynga built a very strong product management practice around quantitative testing and iterating and game dynamics. And that's been a strong contribution to the ecosystem. For me, I learned 3 strains. One was initially eBay, that old school version of like the original fundamentals, including writing good documentation and good prioritization and good stakeholder management. The second strand of DNA I inherited and learned from was the Netflix DNA. When I was at Chegg, my chief product officer there, Gib Biddle, had been head of product over at Netflix. Netflix pioneered a lot of user research techniques, and they were fantastic at it. So I was lucky to learn that. My third strand of DNA was when I went to run product at Udacity. I worked for a founder from Google and a head of engineering from Google. And so while I brought a lot of modern product thinking, I also encountered and worked with people who came from a very engineering-heavy approach. Google, for a long time, their product management was very much in service to supporting engineering, because engineering products were at the core of what helped them win for a while. So as a result, I learned how to work really well with engineers and how to bring engineers collaboratively in the process of product management.
And so your philosophy on product management is what now? Now that you've sort of gotten the Captain Planet, powers combined of all of these different heroes of your and mentors of your past.
Sure. Fundamentally, I subscribe to the product manager being the facilitator inside a tech product design organization, not being the note taker, not being the CEO, but the facilitator to help bring teams along to figure out what to work on and how best to get there, and how to bring in all the ideas in the company, connect that with what user needs are, and deliver the right product. At EXO, we have 6 key attributes of product management. Strategic thinking, 4 elements around execution, which are communication, collaboration, technicals, and quality/detail orientation. And then a 6th one in user science. At a high level, there's strategic thinking, execution, and user science. That's my flavor.
And those were attributes that existed before you got there, or those were that's the archetype that you've built into the EXO?
That's sort of what the philosophy that I've brought in, or at least helped been able to articulate.
Yep.
And I've used those 6 points at other places where I worked as well.
Got it.
Where Netflix was very influential in the user science, eBay was very influential on the strategic thinking and execution, the Google thinking as well, especially on collaboration.
And has user science, has sort of data-driven product management and sort of strategic thinking in your world changed a lot with sort of the platform shifts, just the broad technology shifts that we've experienced from sort of desktop to mobile and beyond over the course of the last 15 years, really, since you've been in the business? Or can you sort of apply the same strategy, the same sort of archetype for somebody to recruit over and over again in that sort of broad framework?
I'm hearing a couple different questions in there. One is sort of how has user science changed, and is it easier or harder to do user science? The second is a little bit.
Well, I guess maybe said differently is you've got this sort of 6 attributes of somebody that you look for, and presumably you have techniques that those people employ in their work. And I'm sort of just wondering, if you think about the tools that they have available to them to do their work, and you think about the underlying technologies that they're working with, could you have applied your framework that you're using today when you started in the business, or is it sort of a new world and sort of
that's a great
fundamentally
question.
different?
The notion of strategic thinking is evergreen.
Yeah.
That's sometimes that's pure IQ and smarts.
Yep.
But as you get more mature in your career, you actually start to develop frameworks.
Yep.
Someone who gets an MBA, for example, has to be a student of those frameworks.
Yep.
Porter's 5 Forces, or you read Jim Collins' books like Good to Great and Built to Last, things like that. And so you as you encounter a new situation, new competitive dynamics, new you're starting versus scaling, or you finding product market fit. Depending on where you are in the business cycle, what tools do you bring to that?
So that stuff's pretty constant.
That stuff is pretty constant. Porter's 5 Forces have been around for quite some time. And Jim Collins has been writing on this stuff for a couple decades, et cetera, et cetera. On execution, that's about keeping up with how we work.
Yes.
So, for example, being a good communicator, being a good collaborator, those are evergreen skills as well.
Yep.
But now somebody needs to know how to work in an agile environment to be a modern collaborator.
Yep.
So there is some notion of keeping up. What does it mean to be a facilitator in a modern agile team?
Yep.
You got to know those tools, et cetera, et cetera. Having the sufficient technicals, that's changed over time.
Yeah.
Gosh, 20 years ago you needed to know SQL.
Yep.
You don't really need to know SQL as much anymore. At some point you needed to know HTML, and then you needed to know CSS, and now you still need to know those types of things, but you also need to understand JSON, and you need to understand JavaScript more. You need to, as a product manager, it's still really helpful to understand technical frameworks so that you can be a strong partner and collaborator with the engineering team and with understanding what's possible. So some of the tools you just need to keep up with them.
Yep.
The last area, user science, has entirely transformed over the last decade or so.
Yeah.
I was a computer science and statistics major when I was in undergrad, and the tools then were very technical and required a lot of engineering. I remember even back in 2008 or 2009 at Mint, when we wanted to do a usability study and watch people using our products, we had to pay $1,000 a test, and it was technical to set up, being able to intercept somebody on our site, say, hey, can we watch you using our site today? Yeah. I remember, in 2010, I think it was, seeing usertesting.com at the time, and being able to just pay $30 to see somebody using my site. Used to be a lot of work, a lot of effort, and really expensive, and now it was easy and much cheaper. Like, wow, the platform has changed. Yep. It's really democratized the ability to watch users going through your site. Yep. I remember how when I used to use Omniture Test and Target back in the day, long before it was acquired and put into a suite, doing an A/B test used to take a couple weeks of engineering work, lots of QA, and still a third of the time there'd be a bug in it that you couldn't discover until after you ran the test. Yep. Much more like front-end A/B testing frameworks such as Optimizely now make it much faster to run tests, to debug tests, and have fewer bugs in them. So the notion of really understanding your user and the tools have just made it so much easier. Yeah, and it's not just that you can get up and running quickly, but that means that your iteration cycles are that much faster. You can just sort of move much more quickly. You get more value from them. It's much faster to do them because it's more accessible. More people understand them. Yep. And it's gotten in the water more. That's great. So as sounds like having a technical background is still pretty useful as a product manager in your mind. If you look at some of the recruiting strategies, if memory serves at companies like Zynga, they recruited people out of like hedge funds pretty actively. When you think about the background that most sets a product manager today up for success, given kind of the state of the technology platforms, the sort of strategy in your mind, what is the ideal background of a product manager? And do you have maybe multiple types of product managers on your team? I'd say you can mesh and overlap a product manager with a business-minded thinker, with a creative and design-minded thinker, with an engineering-minded thinker. and you can have them tackle problems that benefit from that overlap.
Yeah.
So if you're a product manager working on a back-end system and working on APIs and platforms, having a technical background is especially helpful,
right?
Because your users are often engineers.
Right.
Working on a more inventive user experience, an onboarding flow, a signed-in homepage, a product that nobody's ever seen before, having a more creative bent and a more UX related bent can be really helpful. So someone from a design background can be especially powerful in that situation. Mm-hmm. And then if you're in a scenario where you're working on a product that needs iteration and funnel improvement, where their best practices exist, having someone who can be a little bit more business minded, who can go look to see what have been best practices here, and apply those, can be a benefit in those situations. So there are specific backgrounds that can be helpful for specific type of products. I'd say in general, I look for someone with those 6 skills, or to bubble it up, strategy, execution, and user research. The execution elements, you can find someone who's a great executor in many different roles out there. Project management and product management very much overlap in those 4 skills in the middle of communication, collaboration, sufficient technicals and details and quality. A great project manager has those as well. But you could be a great engineer and have those skills. You could be an accountant in marketing. For strategic thinking, you need to figure out, can someone solve hard problems and translate the other contexts in the world or the other history and experiences they have into a new context of the problem that they're solving. So that's that one, which is, has someone solved hard problems? Zynga would have said, well, gosh, at Bridgewater, they're solving really hard problems. They've got to be strategic. Right. I'd look at someone who's like a management consultant and say, gosh, you've been trained in how to be strategic. Sure. So those are areas.
So if you have how many product managers on your team?
Close to 40.
And if you had to kind of take a census of that 40 in terms of where they fit in those 3 archetypes, where would you say they sit today?
I would say a little bit more on the business side. I've got some from more of the artist background and some from the engineering background. Especially, I've got some engineers who transferred to become product managers,
like yourself. And the people that come from the business background, is it management consulting is kind of the pool of talent that you are most drawn to, or is it pretty diverse?
It's pretty diverse. I'd also say though that at our scale, we hire a lot of experienced product managers who the last job they'd had before coming to us was also being a product manager. If we were suddenly had to grow 50x and hire a ton of them, then I'd do something different. For junior product managers, first-time product managers, we've hired people from account management, project management, consulting. We've hired entrepreneurs. So there's a rich set of experiences that bring those to the table. What I don't really find in New York as much is people who come in with a rich user science background. There isn't a good training program for people to learn that unless you go to a place that does that well, or you were a user researcher in your previous job. So we have to do a lot of that training ourselves.
So let's talk about user science for a bit. One of the things you've written about is sort of the menu, sort of like the Chinese menu of different tools and sort of workflows that are available to a modern user scientist, I guess you would call them, starting from kind of low fidelity one-on-one interviews all the way down to pretty granular, large scale testing. Can you give us just a quick bulleted list of what you see sort of as the common practices within your team, and also how prescriptive you are about which of those techniques you think should be used at any given period of time within your team, or if you just are pretty hands-off and say, solve the problem, here's what's available to you?
Well, this is a skill that needs to be learned. User science is the study of users using tools out there to both understand what they need, how they feel, and what they do. I view it as a little bit of a 2x2. And one dimension is user intent. What do people want to do? What do people feel? What do they need? And the other side of that of that continuum on the 2x2 is what they actually do. So observing their behavior. So what people want to do and what people actually do are very different. which is why we struggle with diets and exercise and sleeping enough,
saving
money, etc., etc. The other axis that I use is the qualitative versus the quantitative. So qualitative meaning talking to a small number of people to get deep insights, versus and quantitative getting information from thousands of people to get the more nuances or of how would I break up a population into different areas. So if you think about this 2x2 of user intent versus user behavior, qualitative versus quantitative. I've got tools such as one-on-one interviews as a way to qualitatively figure out how people feel. I can do that in a focus group with multiple people. I've got tools such as surveys to get the intent of people en masse. I can also use SEO as a tool for that. Sure. You can go to Google and see what are people asking for. On the user behavior side, that's when I can build a prototype and put it in front of users and get them to play with it. So, prototyping and usability testing, have people run through my own products or other products. And then at the quantitative level of actual user behavior, I've got analytics using Google Analytics, Mixpanel, etc., as well as A/B testing. So those are the sort of the four quadrants, the different tools that we use. We use them at different times. If I'm about to start an entirely new product, I first want to understand who my users are and what they need. And that starts with interviews.
Much more qualitative.
Qualitative and on the user intent side. From there, I'd probably go survey a bunch of people to say, all right, I've got these 5 ideas of what people want. Let me go ask 1,000 people.
See if it's representative.
Am I targeting the biggest ones and the severity of the need, as well as what might I have missed. From there, I might iterate and go back and ask people more detailed questions, or I might have an instinct of, from this, there's a real problem to solve. That if I solve it, people will use it and it'll matter to them. I'll go over to the user behavior side. I might ask people to go use an existing product and see where they stumble and how it doesn't work for them. I might build something and put it in front of them quickly and see if they use it, and how much does what they said they needed translate to what they actually do. And finally, with those tools, I'll build something, I'll validate it, and then I'll actually release it and see then what happens in the wild. So those are the different tools. There's generally 4 areas or 4 levels of learning. So to your question of how prescriptive am I with my team, there are 4 levels of learning. 1 is, what the heck are these tools? 2 is, when should I use the tools? For example, I found there are product managers who learn how to use A/B testing, and they'll use it for everything. They'll use it in the wrong situation just because they're good at it and they're comfortable with it. And people do the same thing with user testing. 3 is how do I set up those tools without error? This has gotten easier now, but it used to be the case that I remember back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, a third of the A/B tests I'd run would have bugs in them. So how do you actually
garbage in, garbage out?
And so and that's a technical problem. But then also, how do I make sure I haven't put bias in my surveys and my interviews? It's very easy to unintentionally bias. And so that requires training on how to do that kind of stuff well. The fourth continuum, the fourth horizon of learning, once you know what they are, you know when to use them, you know how to do them well, is actually making them ambitious. So the biggest, I'd say, challenge of junior product managers when they do the other things right is they're just not ambitious enough. There's what we call a cover your ass test, which is when I'm launching something new, I want to make sure I didn't break anything.
I tested it.
So I tested it, it's okay, it didn't break anything. And what I encourage teams to do is to have much more ambitious tests, to test the limits of what if you made this much more aggressive than you expected, or you tested very different variants of that to get the learning. A simple example is on price testing. Sometimes you're going to test a price, and you might say, all right, customers might pay 5%, 10% more, so I'm going to A/B test this at the current price plus 10% minus 10%. Well, what if you increase the price by 30% or 50% and decreased it the same way? You'd never really do that in real life, or it may not make sense to do that, but gosh, you'd learn a lot about how users felt about it if you did that test.
And you're doing it on a small portion of your population anyway. So
that's right. So you limit any damage there is to your brand or to your business by doing that. So to get a product manager up the curve to learn those things takes a while. There's some notion of apprenticeship and teaching and coaching. At EXO, we do several things. One is we have something called Product School and Product University where we train people on these skills. Mm-hmm. 2 is we have a dedicated user research team who will help coach people through this.
Mm-hmm. That's available to the entire sort of
available to the entire product org. Initially, when someone comes in, they'll watch your tests to make sure you're not putting bias in, help you make sure the test is ambitious enough, help you interpret the results. As you get more senior and more confident, then they'll help you more as needed.
And is the super technical product manager on one side and the much more business or much more creative product manager on the other side, in your experience, capable of really leading user science in each one of those sort of testing frameworks and learning frameworks? Or is it the case that the more technical folks, do less of the one-on-one interviewing, the less of the focus groups, and more of the kind of more data-oriented learning? Or is it, is your expectation that if you're going to be a serious product manager, you've got to kind of do the whole spectrum?
I think for serious product managers, it's helpful to have all the tools in your toolkit.
Yeah.
Certainly to know them, to know when to use them and how to set them up. On the execution side of things, it's helpful to be able to do all of them.
Yeah.
However, what we often find is that designers in a team are the ones more eager to do the user interviews, mm-hmm. and the product managers are more eager to do the A/B tests. That they naturally self-select into those types of roles. Although we encourage our product designers to feel comfortable doing A/B tests, as well as encouraging our product managers to feel comfortable doing user interviews.
Cool. So last question, and this is a little bit of a break. When I think about the core strengths of a product manager, I guess it's not that unlike any high-performing function. It's really focus and prioritization, right? Mm-hmm. It's your job within the company in so many ways. And as I started this conversation, I said that's one of the things that I respect about you the most. So when you get to the office every day and you kind of organize your day, how do you prioritize? What is whether it's a dashboard, it's a routine, it's a little dance you do at your desk to psych yourself up. What is your sort of prep for a productive day?
It's a great question. I subscribe to the notion of urgent versus important, mm-hmm. constantly saying what's important and be careful of not doing just what's urgent.
Yep.
For me, it actually starts at a quarter level.
Okay.
I mean, I've got my annual goals.
Yep.
Every quarter I take a step back and say, what are the big things that I want to do in the next quarter that are important?
Yep.
That helps me make sure that I'm taking a step back every now and then. At the beginning of every week, on a Sunday night, I'll say, what do I need to do this week? What are the most important things? Mm-hmm. And no matter what, I need to accomplish this week. Mm-hmm. And I'll write them down and actually share them with my team for accountability and for myself.
Yep.
And then at the end of the week, I'll go back and look. Did I do that? Did it make sense? During the week, I'll check in on that. So each day, I've tried to practice of like 10 minutes every morning what I need to get done today.
Yep.
I found that for me, I'm able to do that at the week level. On Sunday night, what are the most important things I need to do? And I'll check in on that during the week. Am I doing that? I try not to do too much email during the day because that has the ability of sort of taking you out of your flow context. I have a pretty big team. I think we've got a team of across EXO 60, 65 people in product.
Yep.
So I end up having a lot of meetings, but those meetings tend to be very productive meetings. They're working meetings.
Yeah.
So making sure that I'm doing the right things in those meetings and actually getting the right things done.
Yep.
And that the key initiatives that we're working on always have accountable owners with clear timelines and goals, including myself on those types of things.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. Great to have you, and hopefully come again.
It's great to be here, Spencer.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
Cheers.